Dr. Mark Skousen, friend of the program, friend of mine, America's economist. He's written a new book on the greatest American, and the greatest American, he says, is Ben Franklin, and I tend to agree with him. He's at least in the top 5 greatest Americans. Welcome to the program, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing well. We're out here in the Mediterranean Sea right now on a Forbes cruise. But isn't this great technology that even Ben Franklin would love?
You know, I don't think people really understand the genius of Ben Franklin. I mean, there's this great article in the Times of London. I don't remember when, but he was going back to London. He was going to challenge the king. And he's going back, and they said, don't let his boat come in to dock because he's been working with electricity, and he's got a ray gun, and he's going to vaporize, all of London. I mean, he was the Elon Musk of his day, but he was almost more magical because people didn't understand it back then. What did you find in writing this book about Ben Franklin that you think most people just don't know?
Well, this is the thing. So when I wrote The Greatest American, I thought to myself, lots of books have been written on his biography. So what I did was I came up with 80 chapters on how he is the most modern of all the founders and how he could talk about the modern issues of today, whether it's trade or taxes or inflation or war, discrimination, inequality. I have a chapter on each one of these in The Greatest American. And, he was the jack of all trades and the master of all on top of it. So one of the things I thought would be really cool is if you put my book on every coffee table in America and people came in to visit, they would look at this book, and there might be an argument, as you say, as to who is the greatest American, whether it's George Washington or Elon Musk or what have you.
Whatever.
But when they see the picture of Ben Franklin, they sit there and nod their head and say, wow, this is the guy I want to sit down with and talk to and have a beer with, because if you sat with some of the other founders, they would get an argument with you or they would refuse to answer the question or what have you. But Franklin was willing to talk to a janitor as well as the King of France. And that's pretty unique.
Yeah, he could. He was an amazing guy. So tell me, in your research of him, you always hear that, Ben Franklin was a notorious womanizer and everything else. And he abandoned his wife, I think Deborah, was that her name?
Yes, Deborah, correct. Yep.
What's true and what's not true about that?
So he certainly was the most liberal-minded when it came to the sexual revolution. That's why I say he's the most modern of the founders, because he was not prudish like John and Abigail Adams, who thought he was a reprobate and a sinner and not a churchgoer and stuff like that.
Right.
So yes, he was. The ladies loved him, and he loved the ladies. There's no question about that. That he was a bit of a playboy, and in fact, he even admits in his autobiography his errata of having a illegitimate child, William. But then he settled down. He married Deborah. And yes, Deborah and him, they did separate because, and it was really more her fault than his, because when he went to London as the London agent, she had an extreme aversion to going out on the seas. It was a dangerous time period. So it's kind of like people who don't like to fly on airplanes today. So they did grow apart. There's no question about that, but they maintained their love for each other. And as a matter of fact, when Franklin died, he's buried right next to Deborah. So I think that's an indication of their love and so forth. But they were very different personalities. She was very focused on more of the home issues. She was not a public intellectual. She would not feel comfortable in the same conversations that Franklin would have with scientists and with public figures and stuff like that. So they definitely differed in their personality.
The story about his son William is one of the saddest chapters. I mean, Thomas Paine kind of looked at him as a father figure, and Ben Franklin did have a son William, as you said, and they had a really bad falling out. Can you quickly tell that story?
Yeah, so I have a chapter on that very issue because who were his enemies, and he did have a number of enemies, including John Adams at one point. They didn't get along. But in the case of William, Franklin arranged for William to be the governor of New Jersey, and he maintained his loyalty. He was a loyalist. Billy was throughout the American Revolution. And at the end of the American Revolution, or during the American Revolution, Franklin writes his son, and he said, it's one thing we can differ on various issues, but when you actually raised money, raised armaments to attack me, this was beyond the pale. This is not something that you should have done. And then at the end of his letter, he says, this is a disagreeable subject. I drop it. So you can feel that emotion, that anger. And yes, he removed him from his will. There were, Franklin got along with almost everyone. I have a whole chapter on how to deal in The Greatest American, how to deal with enemies and how to make your enemies your friends. But this was one example where he just couldn't cross over and forgive him for what William had done. So it is a tragedy, just like you say.
I think I would have a hard time doing that too if my son was raising funds and military against me. It would be kind of hard to forgive. Mark, thank you so much for your work. It's always good to talk to you. The name of the book is by Mark Skousen, and it is called The Greatest American. It's all about Ben Franklin. If you don't know anything about Ben Franklin, you will fall in love with him. You will absolutely fall in love with him. He was fantastic. Mark Skousen is the author. The name of the book, again, The Greatest American.